So, today I want to share a little more insight as to why I started the Work Sucks But I Like It podcast and why I think this conversation is really worth having today. Because work doesn't have to suck. We don't have to struggle each day and fight the alarm clock to get out of bed. Plus, I don't understand why in American culture there is such a strong desire to not work. Because from the physics definition of work, work is a force multiplied by the displacement of the object. From that perspective, we're always doing work. So I would think we would want to choose wisely the work we do instead of brushing off not needing it and praying we get to retirement sooner. It's taken me years of discovering what I like to do for work, and I've gotten both fired and promoted along the way to understand that. I've climbed corporate ladders, I've done entrepreneurial things like write some books and run a business years ago. I've run marathons, climbed rock walls, play golf. I have even worked in my relationships. So today I view work not as the American construct of working 9 to 5 p.m., but more from the perspective of what science tells me work is. How do I respond to the forces acting on me every day? How do I work with, around, or even against these forces? Today, I want to highlight some areas I've been thinking about to kickstart this conversation in the workplace. I've got some friends that are going to be jumping on the show in future episodes to talk about their work, which I'm super excited about. This podcast is a platform for people like yourself to share the important work you do, all the ways we fight the forces of today and move our bodies in space. Not just the stories of owning your own business, but I want to hear more of the everyday grind of what people do. That to me is a more important story to tell because after running 12 marathons, I've realized running is simple. You put one foot in front of the other. That's sort of the grind of running the race. It's not just about always crossing the finish line. So it takes a certain kind of dedication and motivation for people showing up to work today. So let's talk about the different types of employees working today. I found over the years, working at various places with hundreds of different people, that there are similar patterns in the workplace culture. And this is the first thing I want to discuss in today's show. The first person is what I'm going to call the closet enthusiast. This person likes what they do, but they don't openly admit it. They're the type of people that will say, oh, same shit, different day. Oh, another day in paradise. But you find them in their office enjoying the work, secretly finding a sense of fulfillment in the work they're doing. They're almost afraid to admit because they would rather fit in with the rest of the workplace culture saying, oh, I can't wait for the weekend. The second person is what I'm going to call the proud professional. They're the people that like what they do and will indicate it quite openly. You see them working long hours because they just enjoy what they do. They'll come in on the weekends. They do every job given to them. They go above and beyond the assignments. And they might even be that employee that has been there the longest in terms of years. They're dedicated to not only their job, but also to that company. Third person is the paycheck puncher. So this is the person that just does the work for the paycheck. And I actually did resonate with this one years ago. So I used to work at FedEx years ago, and it was because during grad school, my first stint before I dropped out of my material science program, and I didn't have enough money at the time. So during the summer, there was some cutbacks to the funding of the program, so I had to afford, my rent each month. So I did the calculations and determined that I needed to work at this part-time job for about, 3 to 4 weeks. And I have to say that job was miserable because I got up at 3 a.m. and I was literally throwing boxes into the truck because you're getting yelled at because you weren't throwing them fast enough in there. So I get that kind of work. So the paycheck puncher is an actual thing. Some people just go to work for the paycheck. Fourth person I want to talk about is the checked out clock watcher. So this is the person that doesn't want to be there. You may even wonder how they haven't even gotten fired. They're caught sleeping in their office or maybe on the job. They're hardly getting any work done in a timely manner and yet seem to have weathered all the storms of corporate all these years. The fifth person is what I call the climber. This person is the one who wants to climb the corporate ladder. They want the big projects, the glory, the fame of being higher up in the organization. They might be trying to appear a certain way with the vehicles they drive or the way they dress. The sixth person is what I'm going to call the side hustling entrepreneur. This person is working in corporate, but has this supposed idea of a gold standard for how work is to be today, and that is to own your own business, not work for someone else. But here are my initial thoughts on this type of person. There's a growing impression that entrepreneurs making that passive income is what is required today to be happy and do meaningful work. Now, I'm not trying to knock entrepreneurs, but I get sick of hearing how the American dream is now about being free and doing your own thing. And I immediately think to my favorite self-help guy, Zig Ziglar, because he says it well. When you take a train off the tracks, it's free, but it doesn't go anywhere. Now, I don't disagree with entrepreneurs, but what I disagree with is the idea that everyone should and needs to be one to find happiness in the work they do. The last type of worker is what I'll call the spiritual worker. This is a rare person, but I found that they do exist. It's the person who simply engages in what they are responsible for. They know what they must do. They realize it's part of their mission in life. I don't really have a name for this person, but have come across one or two of them over the years at various companies I've worked at. They wouldn't say that they actually love what they do. They aren't even necessarily drawn to titles and doing their own thing as well. There's just this clear understanding of this particular employee that they know their skills and their talents and they know why they're there. There's this sort of spiritual sense as to their purpose of doing the work they do. It could be religious based, as I have found. It could be derived from other sources of inspiration as well. So, with the seven different types, there's no perfect employee or the right one to be. Because let's face it, some days we're just there doing the motions to earn a paycheck. Other days the time flies by as we're so engrossed in an exciting project. And I've had days where I enjoy work and other days I'm ready to quit as well. But that is no different than the feeling and thoughts when I'm in mile 22 in a marathon and my entire body is aching and hurting from all the running. But I stick with it because even though motivation isn't permanent, I keep telling myself it is. So, with these people I've come across, the reason why I started this podcast was because I want to hear about these types of people's stories. Not only have I worked with them, but I've also tried to understand them by getting my master's in psychology. And now I'm actually about halfway through my PhD program, 10 of 20 classes. I'm wrapping up today as I record this particular podcast. And because understanding people and ultimately yourself is really the skill that is most important to any success today. Which leads to the next sort of topic category I've been thinking about with this podcast, and that is working credibility. Another reason I wanted to do this show was from the standpoint of credibility. I'm sick of hearing start a business. I want to do my own thing. Corporate sucks. I hear these things and understand where they're coming from. I see these posts and likes and they get traction, they go viral or what have you. Now, I don't disagree with starting your own company. Because, in fact, nearly 99.7% of businesses in the US are actually under 100 people. And you've heard the statistics of small businesses coming and going, with half of them, never really making it to 5 years. So people are going to start their own businesses. What frustrates me, though, with these things and books I've read and quotes and influencers I see online, is that they're not really walking the talk. Talk is so cheap these days online. Post something with a fancy cliche and you get lots of likes and followers. Whoop-de-doo. Leaders saying great quotes and inspiring the masses is about the equivalent of managers giving hoorah speeches in the meetings and are nowhere to be found on the floor. I say what I say in the show because I have lived it. I still experience it as a quality manager working in the aerospace manufacturing industry today. Say what you do, and more importantly, you do what you say. Again, talk is cheap. There's this sense of drowning out of ridiculous videos of squirrels getting drunk on fermented fruit on Instagram, TikToks that go viral from a fancy dance sequence, people taking elaborate vacations to sit back and enjoy life. But this leads to the next point, and probably the most important personally for me these days to be thinking about. And that is life has become a spectator sport today. And I think this is a growing idea in the American dream that if you aren't wealthy or you don't want to do work, you want this ticket for a ride up to retirement, and the company's going to guide you on the way, or you take the other route of buying a lotto ticket and win the millions. The problem that I have when you think of, your life in this manner of, buying a ticket for the lotto or securing your ticket for the nice secure ride up the mountain to retirement is that tickets are for a show, right? So my girlfriend and I enjoy the theater. We buy tickets and we get to watch actors and actresses do their work and play on stage. We don't have to do anything, but just sit in our seats. We spectate, but occasionally applaud for their demonstrations of talent and hard work to prepare for all this. And that's a kind of a concerning thought, right? If we're spectators to life. So I don't own a TV. I never have. I've never bought one. I'm now 38 years old. This doesn't mean I don't watch things on my computer, but I purposely choose to not have a TV because I don't want to be a spectator all the time. It's too easy to get caught up on Instagram with FOMO on people's vacations and supposedly living a good life. It's also too easy to get lost in a Netflix show and waste an entire evening. And life is not a spectator sport, and we just have to get involved. And social media is a bunch of spectators. Involvement has to be beyond simply liking and commenting. And even with this show, right? So We're going to be talking about on the show, going to be interviewing people, hearing about their awesome stories, how they balance the work life equations in their life. But what I'm more interested in, why I bring these certain people on, is that I know that they're walking the talk because I've met them. I've done work with them. I practice yoga with some of them. And we need conversations like this to be talked about more. I talked about this in a previous episode with the potential of LinkedIn being ESPN. And we don't need more online business growing classes on how to grow your followers on TikTok for doing dumb trick shots with golf balls into a cup. We need stories of people actually making this planet operate, how people are showing up each day to do good work. We're the heroes playing the everyday sport of showing up to this thing we call work and stepping onto the big stage to play what I call their song and dance. Because if you go back to defining work from that physics perspective and not the constructed cultural definition of 9 to 5, doing it for 40 years until you retire, work is simply a force multiplied by the displacement of the object. So now consider all the forces acting on you. Of course, we have the force of gravity, right? We wake up in the morning and we have to use our muscles to stand tall out of bed. We use our hands and arms to lift the coffee cup to our mouth. That's all work. The force required to step on the gas pedal to get your car to move. The displacement of the pedal with the force of your foot is also work. We could even stretch this definition and think of the psychological forces. Forces like your boss telling you what to do, forces like you needing a paycheck to feed your family, and so on. The internal force of your mind telling you you need that new TV or not. So when work is simplified to a force multiplied by the displacement of an object, it all begins the second you wake up. You're doing work because gravity is a force that is pulling you down. So work, therefore, is an important topic to talk about. But it's almost viewed like politics sometimes. People are afraid to talk about work and life, afraid to admit you're on one side or retired or have a certain view or whatever. And I find employees really like to play it safe with these conversations. But it isn't the type of playing safe as to not offend someone, but more to play it safe because it's culturally not acceptable to admit you love work unless you have your own business or have amassed a large online following, while all the while growing your email subscriber list. We feel inferior when we say, I'm a process engineer, I'm a teacher. We would rather say we're retired or running a business and we're saving the world. And that is likely because of all the crap we see online. So work should not be measured in just the quantitative measures of likes and paychecks or number of people that you follow on Instagram. Work should be realized as a force acting on your mind and body, and you needing to respond and not react to them to move accordingly in the right direction. So that is what the podcast is aiming to explore. What is that right direction to work in life? Well, I believe everyone has their own song and dance. I believe that everyone has values they strive towards in their life beyond a paycheck. This is what my first book was about, The Impression of a Good Life, Finding Your Song and Dance. That is the type of work that needs more discussion today. Celebrating the industrial athlete. Picture it like this. You put in a long day of work, as they say, you get home, your family and pets greet you at the door to celebrate for a moment the accomplishments you did for the day, or rather it's a hello, welcome home, did you grab the mail? You're sick of work though. You've had a long day, you don't want to do any more work, so you sit down and open up your phone and see your friends and family posting their vacation trips. They're smiling, you're not smiling, you're supposedly not having fun. What makes things worse is that your family doesn't necessarily know all about the things you did that day and only can measure what you've done with the paycheck you bring in and the fact you pay the bills to keep the electricity on. They don't see what you do at work. They don't hear what gets done. They don't feel the challenges you overcome to get the job done. So as you hang up your coat and you all sit in front of the TV, you just see these stars smiling all dressed up. Everyone's cheering and celebrating about the movies they made. They're getting awards, the Oscars, the Tonys, the Grammys, and so on. But what does the average employee get? They get a paycheck. They get an annual review. And it's pathetic, really. And all I can think of is how workers like yourself are the backbone of how airplanes fly, how students get their education for you teachers, how lawns get cut, how bathrooms get installed. We don't highlight those other than when we see a celebrity's ridiculous house and bathroom as large as our garage. So American culture is so set on working little today, but having it all. And yet my favorite to hear time and time again is for those that are retired, they're telling me about their work histories, what they did, how they served people, how long they did it for. And this, by the way, is probably my favorite one. Someone indicating that they did something for 40 years. And all I can think about is, what did you do the other years of your life? It sounds like a prison sentence of doing your time. But that is what I hope to really bring about in this show. We can find work life balance. We can make work enjoyable. It's going to suck at times, but that's part of work. American culture is so fixated on having things so perfect that we forget that humans are imperfect. We know top athletes make mistakes, but we look up to the ESPN highlights of top tennis shots or golf shots. Where do we turn to the employee doing good work each day? The unspoken hero that got a customer out of a bind by running some data and making a game time decision. How about the employee who had a record day of producing X amount of parts? It was a new record. They don't get a medal like in the Olympics. They don't get an award. Nor am I saying that they need to, right? I'm not saying everyone gets an award. What I'm saying is we need to recognize the work that you do and others do because we don't. Supervisors gloss over the numbers that are good and forget how we got to them. It's like killing the goose that lays the golden eggs. Corporations expect the employees to produce golden eggs every day, but when they get greedy and want more from their employees, they end up killing them by working longer hours and by giving them no feedback as to how they're performing. And that's about as equivalent as paying an athlete and barely telling them if they won the race or not. Nice job for showing up. So here's your paycheck. We'll see you tomorrow and on the track and ready to run again. Value today. I guess as I think about this podcast, I'm just sick of what is valued today. That there's so much focus on what something is worth that we overlook what standards we want to live our lives. That we're so focused on the truck we're driving to bring our kids to school to get a piece of paper and not as much the education that they're actually getting. And we value rushing through life to get to retirement, believing we've made it, when retirement is literally a construct. Mother Nature and Father Time didn't get together and say, oh, humans should retire when they're 65, and that'll be a nice ripe age for them to just stop doing everything. So, why has our work culture gone so astray? Why do we hate working for companies which are comprised of teams of people, while sport athletes love playing for specific teams and doing work with certain people? And of course, there's no clear answer, right? And there's no right answer either. But what needs to happen is a strategy or a way of thinking that needs to be talked about for how to really navigate the concept of what we're going to call value today. The conversation of value has to be brought back to the workplace. Value has two meanings that, we need to think about. Typically, we think of the word value of what something is worth, right? And that really is the second meaning. The first meaning is the standards for which we're to live by. So value to me can be simply viewed as this, right? I bought a pair of shoes years ago and they were very comfortable. Each step that first week I had the shoes, I felt like I was walking on a cloud. Whatever that feels like, because of course I've never walked on a cloud. But the point is they were very comfortable and I was aware of how comfortable they were. But then weeks and months go by, and as I'm talking today, this pair of shoes I'm still wearing, I don't feel that same sort of like joy when I first bought them. And they're now have become more of a practical necessity, so I don't step on stuff with my bare feet. The founder of Patagonia, the outdoor clothing manufacturer, Yvon, indicates in his book, Let My People Go Surfing, that most people will buy something and by 2, 3 months later, that item has probably made its way into a landfill. We don't value things beyond how they will look just in the moment, how they will feel. There's a different sense of value that needs to be brought back into the conversation. He goes on further to indicate, Yvon, the founder of Patagonia, that we have become more consumers today and not citizens. And that's definitely a fun topic I want to explore later. But back to the shoes. The value of the shoes was, say, $100 when I bought them. But there's another value to having the shoes as they've allowed me to walk comfortably to go to talk to a neighbor or to go for a walk in the park. So let's extend how we look at other objects we use every day beyond the price tag of what we bought it for. So where does that leave us today? This podcast was just sort of a dump of all my thoughts and feelings surrounding work today, but I really want and have the intention of getting people like yourself to share your work, share your stories of what you value, maybe indicate why you do what you do, the responsibility you feel towards your work today. Are you the spiritual worker? Are you the one that just, is the paycheck puncher? Let's wrap up this episode and quickly run through a summary of all the potential topics that I want to talk about on the show. And remember, if you want to be on the show, check out the website worksucksbutilikeit.com and shoot me a message there to talk about getting on the show. So in this episode, we talked about all the different types of potential people that show up to work, indicating that it isn't the goal to be one or any of them, as we're humans that fluctuate day in and day out with our moods and behaviors. Because some days we are the proud professional, while others, we're just waiting for the clock to turn 5. Then we talked about credibility, and it's not just about posting things online. It's about walking the talk, right? So that's kind of what the show is about too. It's holding me accountable to me now saying what I'm doing, and then therefore I need to go and practice this in my everyday. And I want to have that an option for you as well. We need to remember that life is not a spectator sport. It's about participating. I get asked how I fit what I do in the day quite often, and I've shared my calendar in a previous episode and on YouTube. But the essence of what drives the calendar is that I want to participate in everything I do. I don't want to be a spectator to life and have it pass me by. To me, life is about getting involved. It's about showing up. And the easiest thing you can do today is to put your phone down after listening to this podcast, of course, and go and participate in life right now, where you're at, no matter what you're doing. We then talked about the importance of what you and others are doing for work and how that's important, how this needs to be celebrated more and liked and commented on. Recognizing that the American culture has it backwards with feeling like work is a prison, when in actuality, the work we do is liberating us to do what we need to do while we're alive. A quick little story about that. My great great aunt Ruth, who was basically my mother growing up. My parents divorced when I was 5 years old, but I was very fortunate to have two great great aunts, who were both sisters, that basically helped my dad in raising my brother and I. And it was 2009, and I'll never forget that senior year of college when I went to see my aunt Ruth for what would be the last time that she'd be alive. And she smiled at me. And she couldn't speak due to the illness she had, but her smile radiated that she gave life her all. And my dad reminded my brother and I that she'd be out there playing street hockey when she was in her 70s. That took work. She was not a spectator to life. She participated every day up until that last smile that I saw with her. And, I hope I can look back on my life just like she did and smile as to the things I work for and towards. And so this takes us to the last point we talked about, and that's of value. The two meanings of the word value, the standards for which you're to live by and what something is worth. So look beyond the sticker value of something. Look beyond the car you drive or the clothes you wear. What are they serving you in your song and dance? And with that, I want to thank you for your time and attention. And again, if you want to be a part of this important conversation today on work, please head to the website worksucksbutilikeit.com. Remember, success is not good luck, it's good skills. So good skills to you, and thanks for listening.
Straight across the Great Plains to the heart of America, and you found a place in mind.
Thanks for listening. Just want to shout out to my band, the Nowhere Kids. The music you've been listening on the show is from a song called Breezy.